Nice, easy game. Start of session. Okay, so I already saved the replays from earlier this week, correct? That's what happened? Yep. Okay, so glad we could do this at some point, you know, better later than never. So let's go and give the viewers and myself a quick rundown. Why you here, buddy?
Alright, well, I've been playing Dota for a while, but I still suck at it. So,
That's a lot of money.
I thought I was getting better in 7.20. I had like a 60% win rate, but since the new patch, my win rate's dropped to like 44%. So I'm hoping that you can take a look at what I'm doing, tell me what I'm doing wrong, and give me a direction to go in.
Yeah, for sure, man. Awesome. So it said you gave me an Offlane Sven game and a Safelane Ursa. Is there like a primary role for you or a primary play style for you? Any like in an MMR? What's exactly your MMR?
So my MMR right now is 1.9k.
Okay.
So it's pretty low. I used to play offlane, and then I started playing safe lane about a year ago, and now I think I'm switching back to offlane. So.
Okay. Cool. So, you have this Safelane Ursa game, which is probably, you know, it is kind of similar to offlane in the sense that you're more of like an aggressive hero, and like space maker kind of hero. But let's go ahead and just check these out. So I'll pull it up. I just tell you and the viewers every time, the lower the MMR we go, usually the tips I give are, excuse me, more and more general. So, they're going to be like, when I say general, I mean fundamentals that have to be taken care of. The kind of way I look at Dota is that, and anything, honestly, is that like, I'm not going to be able to explain or like get you to do things until like the proper fundamentals are taken care of, because
yeah, that's fair.
Like, it doesn't matter if you know when to pressure if you get your items 3 minutes late for other reasons, you know? So, we're going to make sure we take care of that. I'm just letting you know ahead of time. I've had some sessions with, like, lower MMR people who are actually really in-depth. It just kind of depends on the player and the mistakes I'm seeing, so... because sometimes their mistakes are, like, them getting in their own head, and it's very random what the mistakes are. So, we're just going to check this out. Safelane Ursa game first. Is that okay with you? Or wait, are you the Ursa in this game, or the Sven? What's your name on here?
There's an Ursa in both. My name on this is Askavas.
Okay, so this is the Sven game. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and share screen with you on Discord before you remind me to do so, because usually I forget. Can you see?
Yep.
Cool. Nice. No technical difficulties on any end. A lot of my recent coaching sessions have had some sort of technical difficulty. Okay. So first and foremost, I'm going to talk about tangos and salves. This seems like a very fundamental thing, but it's something I didn't learn until, very recently. Like, when I say very recently, maybe a year and a half ago. So, for, like, my overall Dota career, that's pretty recent. So, the idea behind tangos and salves is tangos are obviously good for sustaining, right? So, if you think you're going to get constantly poked, tangos are really good. While on the other hand, salves are really important in the sense that they allow you to man up on somebody, okay? That's like, a lot of people think, yeah, it's just 400 HP. That's what it gives me. No, what it does is it allows you to take trades with somebody such that you're both low HP. So like for instance here is if Slark has a salve and you don't, and he essence shift hits you like 7 or 8 times, and you stun him and hit him back, and you're at 200 health and he's at 200 health, he wins because he has a salve and you don't. Like, lane's instantly lost. So basically, whenever I go into a lane, I ask myself if I'm in a matchup where the guy's going to man up on me, and if I want to man up on him. And in this case, I think it's really important that you're able to man up on Slark, because it's a situation where if you have a salve and you know what a salve does for you, and you know what a salve does for him, and you see he has no salve, guess what? You can punish him by stunning him, hitting him 5 times, losing most of your HP, making him lose most of his HP, and suddenly you win the lane, right? So it's just something to consider. Like, it is a fundamental thing that, like, I think in this lane, the 2 mangoes is correct because the stuns have to go into those mangoes. And then at that point, I'd have 1 set of tangos and a salve. This is just something to think about at all times, and things you'll be able to punish if you think about it, because your opponents will make these mistakes a lot. Okay, so any questions about that, by the way?
I don't think so. I get what you're trying to get at. So.
Okay, cool. Moving on. And as I talk about pretty much every session, that's all about just envisioning what the lane's going to look like when you go into it. So, like, when I look at Slark, I think a lot of trades, a lot of fighting back and forth. Against a tri-lane. Okay, creep aggro. See how Sal would be pretty useful. I don't talk too much about CSing under tower unless there's some fundamental I think I can teach you about it. Otherwise, it's just practice.
Yeah, I'm having a really bad night this game.
If you have any specific questions about CSing under tower, feel free to ask, but otherwise I'm not gonna... I don't harp on that kind of stuff. What's up?
I've heard you talk about it before.
Okay, cool. What happened there? That was weird. Did he glimpse you?
No, I got pulled back by Disruptor.
Oh, okay. So far, nothing crazy. Nice of them to push the lane into your tower and not pull.
Yeah. I rarely see pulls.
So generally speaking, this is really bad. What's happening here? First and foremost, doesn't matter how much mana you have if you have no health. Secondly, Wand is an item that is an item you get when nothing's better. So when people asked about, like, if you upgrade a stick to a Wand, if in the past you'd go 2 Wraith Bands instead of 1. Like, when you go these, like, small upgrade items, generally speaking, what that means is there's nothing more important for you. Can you name some items that would be more important than the 300 gold you spent to finish this Wand?
Well, we talked about salves, and then movement speed would also be great.
Yeah,
So
boots are really important in this lane, right? So you're effectively putting half the cost of boots into this Wand. So a very fundamental thing is, like, so I tell people in coaching sessions, when you jungle, you're saying there's literally nothing to do on the map ever in the next recent future, or recent, what's coming up. In the near future, sorry, I was like pegging there. When you buy an item like Wand, you're saying there's literally nothing you need in the game right now. Like, no item you absolutely need. Because at the end of the day, the Wand gives you 3 all stats and a few extra charges. While, like, movement speed, like, on sometimes the Wand might be the best item. Like, what if you're Terrorblade against a Batrider lane, Maybe the Wand is the best lane, or item, But it's just one of those things where most of the time it's not. And so in this case, it's just like a small example of why make your game even harder to win by having no health regen and a Wand instead of boots. So just remember what I tell you about what you're saying with actions you're doing. That's like what it comes down to, like these fundamental item choices, these like things I'll talk about in the mid game. Hard to talk too much about the lane because they're not pulling correctly, like you're doing things appropriately, but I wouldn't know if you would respond if they pulled because like they're not. So okay. Seems really greedy to go 2 points cleave as an offlaner. I probably would have gone at least 2-0-2 first. That's my opinion, though. Maybe in your bracket you don't get punished. I just feel like as an offlaner, it's kind of your job to just apply pressure and contest them in lane. You're not really farming until later. The way I look at offlaning is you're farming, like, once you beat the carry. Like, once you win the lane, you're farming. Like, that's when your kind of job is to just chill and farm. So if you haven't, like, won the lane yet, I don't, like, start farming yet. So I think of my skills as, what skills do I need to win the lane? And then after I've established control of this lane, I'm farming. I guess in this specific case, so at, like, this point, I'd be like, oh, I just hit level 5. He's level 3. I'll put a point in cleave now. Like, that's what I would have done. I feel like you want to think about the situation that's currently going on in the lane. So, like, when all of your abilities... The cleave doesn't actually help you win the lane. Yeah, you can say I'm cleaving and doing a little bit of damage to Slark, like, every time I hit the creep or whatever. But overall, like, an extra point in Warcry, it, like, does a significant portion of... how much extra is it nowadays? Meaning, like, I know they changed it last patch, so it goes from 30... It goes up by 70 health, and it, yeah, it about doubles. It about doubles from level 1 to 2. I've never done the exact math when they reworked it. And then, like, the stun doubles in damage as well. So it's like, your trades with him, potential kill opportunities, they'll just go up. And then you'll be like, oh, I hit level 5, he's level 3, I'm winning the lane, I can farm now. That's, like, a pretty basic mindset you can almost always have in the offlane. Think about each skill for winning the lane, and then once you feel like you've won the lane, what items and skills can you buy in order to, or level, in order to increase your farm for the near future. And then at this point, I'll imagine to myself, how long am I farming for? Like, what am I doing with this lead? Am I pressuring their tower? Am I just controlling the lane equilibrium so the enemy carry can't walk up to me? Am I building to continue trading? Like, what am I doing? Okay, am I just free farming? I can go Midas. There's kind of like several options in the meta. A lot of this meta is kind of just free farming with a Midas is usually what people tend to do. Let's see. CK is like very similar in that regard. CK and Sven, like when you're behind, are, from the carry perspective, are kind of like heroes that make it so you can't really walk up to the creeps. So generally speaking, what I'll do on a hero like Sven or CK is I'll literally just static the wave, dare the carry to come up to me, and every time they come up to me, do exactly what you just did there. And then the minute they give up on the lane, I start pushing the tower. So what I do is, my general mindset that you want to have is I create a lane that they don't want to come back to. And then I make them want to come back by pushing the tower. Okay? So yeah, that's like a general thing. So it's like, create a situation they don't want to be in, force them to leave, and then force somebody to come back. Once they come back, you recreate the situation you don't want them to be in. I don't like this play. Any reason why you don't think I like this play?
I guess because it would be easy if the supports were there to come over and stop it.
Okay. So is this Slark ever killing you in this lane? Like,
I don't think so.
Okay. So at what situation is this Slark going to farm this stack?
Only whenever I get it low.
Okay. Or, okay, so basically, maybe when he's level 6, he can, like, spam it down. Okay, so not for a while. Or when you get it low for him. Yeah, that's true. So I'm thinking to myself, the lane's pushed into your tower. If I'm a decent player, where do I think you are?
Yeah, you know I'm hitting the jungle.
Yeah. And not only that, you're level 5. So you're going to take more damage from these neutrals than you should because you're not quite level 6 yet. And you're giving him the one opportunity to possibly soak XP from this. So a lot of farming camps like this, in the mid game, in the early lane like this, is all about equilibrium. If this lane was shoved into the tower and you didn't feel like you pressure the tower, then you go kill this camp.
Yeah.
Because at that point, there's no way they can test you. If they're contesting you, you'll literally see the carry walking through the creeps to get to you. If they happen to have 2 supports here, or even 1 support, and you get yourself down to half health, that might be the one time ever they could kill you. And that's like, in a situation like this against the Slark, the only way you lose control of this lane is if you die, right? That's literally the only way. There's like, he's not going to farm his way back into this lane. So this is just a high risk, like low reward play in the sense that it's the equivalent of pushing high ground when you're not strong enough to do it. It's your objective. It's something you should do, but you're not strong enough to do it yet. So
if I see the 2 supports on the map right now, is it okay to do this or no?
I would still shove the lane in because you're absolutely controlling the lane, and this gives a lot of information as well. It's all about the information game. If you shove the lane in, and you could be ganking mid, you could be farming the stack, you could be sitting here waiting for Slark to walk up, you know, like you could be doing so many things. But like right now, if you're thinking about it from a good player's perspective, you're probably jungling. Like, that's all you're doing. And then, like, I would literally walk over here as Slark and soak the XP from you. That's another thing I would do if I was Slark. I'd literally be sitting over here because I assume this is what you're doing when the lane's under your tower. You have to think, like, if a guy's winning in a lane, what's he usually want to do?
He wants to continue winning.
And just sit in the lane, right? Yeah. So if the lane's shoved into your tower, it makes it really easy to read what you're doing because you should be here. But if you, like, shove the lane into his tower, there's really no idea of what he knows what you're doing. He's going to have to play scared under tower. His supports don't feel comfortable walking over here because it could be you and Pudge. Like, and, you know, they don't know what you're doing. In this case, it's just, like, giving too much information. And so, generally, like, it's a basic tip, but it's actually a pretty complicated, meaning, like, high-level idea. It's just like, what would the enemy guy think you're doing when you're winning the lane? What would he expect from you? And that's kind of how you can learn to read people's movements. Like, if a guy wants to be in your lane because he's winning and suddenly he's just not there, it's, like, easy to call missing because he should be in your lane. Otherwise, like, what is he doing? So
right now would be a good time to do that since I just used my ult and it's pushed out.
Yes, I would have done exactly this, where I would have bullied the Slark away, forced rotations, and then, like, depending on what ends up happening, I would have farmed the camp. So this is all fine. The problem is you have no health. So at this point, you don't... This is what I see a lot in your bracket. So I see a lot of this no health lingering. A lot. So... I like to leave people... I don't want to say, like, ultimatums, but, like, a decision tree. So one thing you need to avoid happening in Dota is this quote-unquote lingering, where you're 50% between two decisions. So the two decisions, in my opinion, are flying out a ton of regen, or like regenning up, or going back to base. Those are your two choices right now. That's it. That's nothing else in between is okay. Okay? Like, that's the first thing I want to be clear about. There's none of this, like, I'm staying in lane with a third health. No. Like, let the Slark have one wave of free farm and come back full health. Okay? Like, rather than sitting here like this. Okay? Or fly yourself a salve or two salves and some tangos, right? Like, one of those two options. Otherwise, you're just giving Slark control in a lane where he's down by 2 levels. And you can't be aggressive because you look like this, okay? So when it comes to those two decisions, when you base, what are some things you could do on the way to base?
Yeah, when I go to the base, I can take a look at the map, see what's happening.
Okay, absolutely. But let's think about your item build and skill build. What are some things you could do on the way to base?
Consider what I need for the particular game.
Okay, how about hit a jungle camp?
On the way there, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, what I'm saying is, like, if you're going to base, then the next decision is, how urgent do I feel that it is that I get back to this lane? Okay? So, like, in some situations, like this one, do you think it's urgent to get back to lane? Why or why not?
I would think so, just because I know the Slark's down and I don't want him to get level 6.
Exactly, right?
At the same time, yeah.
That's it, right? That's it.
Okay.
Because he's a hero that is behind and struggles from behind and then hits away, like, he's much more survivable, much more independent, like, 2 minutes from now. Like, once he hits level 6, his game looks incredibly different. So that should give you a sense of urgency to do whichever one you're doing. And you need to know there's a sense of urgency to be here while he's not level 6 yet. So, like, but in other cases where, say, Slark's level 5.5, and you know by the time you get back to this lane, he's going to be 6 anyway, why not why not go stack and farm a jungle camp or whatever? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's my consideration on the way back to base, is how quickly do I need to be doing something else? There's times where I've jungled camps and I'm like a void and I need to go regen, and 15 seconds before I'm done regenning, a fight breaks out and I'm not there for it. So that's something I learned from, right? Meaning, oh, I shouldn't have jungled that camp. I should have been ready for that fight. I had to go base. That's an example. At this point, I'd also check my shrine. That's like a great fundamental, like, if my shrine's available at 10:25, then I'd probably just rather hit 2 jungle camps, get the shrine, and walk back to lane. Like, that's another, like, these are all, honestly, like, just mental check marks. And that's what I meant by when I talk to you guys, like, when I look at, like, I'd say 3K and below, I'm just talking about mental check marks of things that I want to trigger in your mind when you're making certain decisions, and it'll help you make much clearer decisions. So I don't like this whole lingering thing. Notice how you haven't checked the shrine. Anytime I'm at this health and I'm thinking I need to regen, or I need to base, or sorry, I need to fly myself regen, or I need to base, I immediately check shrines. So
I used shrine earlier, so I was thinking it was down.
No, it's one of those things where you know it's down. It's just like, even I, like, wouldn't expect you to remember the exact minute you used it. So, like, this is a spot where, based on the map, I would definitely pressure this guy. He's level 5. Good. Don't want to overextend, though, because they have Disruptor. I would have forted my creep right there. Oh, nice. You did fort it. A little late, though. Nice try, if that was you.
Yeah, it was me.
Okay, little late. You should keep the range creep alive, because it lets the range creep tank the tower while you can, like, posture aggressively on the Slark. If you fort the catapult, catapults have lowest aggro priority, so the tower will hit you. So it's important to keep that range creep alive if you're going to fort.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't have a south like we talked about.
Okay.
I wanted to draw the aggro.
Oh, I'm saying that if the range creep's alive, then you don't have to draw any aggro.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I'm just saying, like, if you're going to fort it like that, do it when the range creep's alive. Something to remember, okay? That's all I'm saying. Because the range creep will tank for you while it's forted.
Radiant's middle tower is
it allows you to like position aggressively on the Slark, and then maybe you're willing to tank a couple tower shots or something like that. Even though you don't have a salve, you do have a morbid, so it's like you'd be fine losing a bit of health. Okay, so they're just dedicating a lot of resources to your lane, which as an offlaner, your choices are to pressure the tower, gank, or just like have them deal with you with 3 heroes while your Ursa Roches. That's fine. Like, this is acceptable. We're making some space. Flying yourself your Vlads. Fine with this. So notice how you never flew yourself regen this whole time, right? And you never shrined. And notice how I talked about you having regen issues at 10 minutes? This is why it's so important that you make that snap decision one way or the other at 10 minutes. I can't tell you how often I will watch people that don't make that decision, and I see them at 5 minutes later, you still have health and mana problems. Okay? Like, I know you may say I've been fighting or whatever, but you've literally been consistently low on health and or mana for the last 5 minutes. So it's something that seems so basic, but it is so important for your sake of you're literally doing the right job in this game. Like, I'm not even telling you what you're doing in the game is wrong. You're literally doing it at like 20% power because you just have no mana or low health or whatever. Like, you're on the right place on the map. Now, like, execute properly, have a sense of urgency to come right back with full health, full mana. Like, yeah, it's okay if you linger because your teammates are all here or whatever. Like, they also have a Necro who just didn't feel like scything you at 30% health. It's fine. I think you should have died there. Okay, you end up dying. So that death's 100% because you started the fight with 40%. Overall, what you're doing is fine. Okay, so here's my question for you. What do you think about that TP?
Well, I know I'm in dead lane right now, but I was thinking that I need to have this lane pushed out.
Okay. So it sounds like you've watched some of my sessions before. I talk about rules and exceptions, right? So on average, I think you will gain 300 MMR if you literally never TP to your safe lane for the next 200 games. Okay, like you just never TP to your own safe lane. There are games where it's correct. Okay, like let me be very clear. I'll say if everyone in the game is alive or like pretty much everyone's alive, never TP to your safe lane. Okay, like so I'm gonna explain to you in this specific instance why it's bad. So this is the dead lane. Is it the dead lane because it's dangerous for you?
Yeah, right now it is.
It is not dangerous for you. It is the dead lane because your objective is bottom. So the dead lane is twofold concept. It's a dangerous lane on average, or it's the lane that you're just not doing anything. Okay. So when would you play this lane when you're not doing anything? Why would you play it?
We would play in this lane if all or the other 2 lanes were pushed out.
Okay, so here's how I think about it. If you're not doing anything, what's probably happening?
If we're not doing anything, then
objective-wise,
the team's doing something.
Okay, the enemy team's doing something. So if we understand the dead lane, where are they probably doing something?
They're probably doing something in the dead lane.
Yes. So when do we go to the dead lane if we're not doing anything? If we feel strong enough to stop them from doing something. So, like, if we think it's our job to stop them from doing something and we think we're survivable enough to go here and we know it's not our job to do anything right now, then we go here. So my question is, why do you think I'm telling you it's your job to do something right now?
Because right now, if we take a look at the bottom, there's creeps hitting our tower and there's a fight in the jungle.
Okay. So, also, who should be doing something right now? I gave you a little hint right now. Ursa, right? I was literally going to check his item, like, if he doesn't have a blink, it's even more important that you're doing something right now. Because I would also think to myself, right now, generally speaking, Dota, in a basic vacuum, is 4-1. Almost all times in the early game, there's at least one core that's supposed to be farming. Yeah, there's, like, times where you 5-man, and, like, there's exceptions to that, but a lot of the time, it's, like, 4 people creating space for 1, Sometimes it's 3 creating space for 2, but like I'd say the average is 4 people creating space for 1. So I would think in this game, it's your job to create space until this Ursa gets blink. And then maybe it's okay for you or Lena, or even a support at that point, to be the one getting space while the other 4 do something. So I'm just telling you that as something to think about, like based on your lineup, when you think you're allowed to farm, okay? Because a lot of people in your bracket, I mean, I'm talking 5K and below at this point, they literally just farm because nobody else wants to do anything. And that's like a stigma of the fact that everyone doesn't know what they're doing. Like, if they know it's their job to do something, and I tell you if it's your job to do something, that 90% of the time it's down here, that's a very basic idea. Like, what you'll do is, if you think it's your job to do something, and you run down here, and it fails, you can ask yourself, did it fail because I was supposed to do something somewhere else? Did it fail because I didn't look at the minimap? Did it fail because I needed 1 or 2 more of my heroes to be here? Why did it fail? And then you can actually learn from it, right? So the idea here is, mainly speaking, the reason why you don't TP to the safe lane in this specific instance and all the other ones is because it's okay for you to walk to the safe lane. What's the difference in this case between walking and TPing to the safe lane?
So if I walk to the safe lane, I still have a TP that I can get to somewhere else on the map.
Yes, and there's something for you to potentially do right now. Yes, you just saw 4 heroes bottom, right? They were just fighting you. So maybe you don't want to just TP into bottom and brawl. Okay, that's understandable. But at any point, you know there's 4 heroes bottom. So what you should do mentally is, okay, they have 4 heroes bottom. Let's shove this lane out. And if anything happens here, I need to be here. Or able to be here. More importantly, able to be here. Okay, so that's the major thing. So I think it's perfectly fine for you to walk here, push this out for the same reason you're thinking, but be ready to confront the opponent. When you have the opponent is grouped up, have you heard me talk about, okay, this Lena build hurts my eyes. When you see the opponent,
she was actually a support. The Nyx was our mid.
I mean, I don't care what role she is. This hurts my eyes. So my sorry, I just noticed that while in the midst of my talk. So basically, what I was gonna say is, what was I gonna say? That was so distracting.
When you see the enemy team group.
Oh, when the enemy team groups up, what are the 2 options?
They're trying to take an objective or a fight to take an objective.
Okay, so but like, what are your 2 choices in response? Sorry.
Okay, so respond to them, like go to fight them, or go somewhere else.
And do what?
Push out the waves.
And apply pressure by pushing the waves. Okay.
Yes.
So the idea is you're applying pressure, so that can mean pressuring a tower, like threatening Roche, you know, pushing a wave, whatever, that kind of thing. So the idea behind TPs, okay, is to think about the game that way, meaning if the opponent groups up and you're in as high a percentage as times as possible, you need to have either option available to you. Okay, so whether that means, like, most of the time what that means is walking somewhere that isn't where the fight is and then being ready to take a TP to where the fight is. So just remember, every time you TP somewhere, you are saying the team does not need you anywhere else on the map for 80 seconds. That is what you are declaring, and that is what you need to think about when you make a TP. Like, I don't need to be anywhere for 80 seconds. If you don't know, fucking walk somewhere. And then maybe you didn't need to TP for the next 80 seconds. And you'd be like, okay, next time maybe I can TP. Okay? Like, but if you TP, it's really hard to see what would have happened if you had your TP. It's like really difficult to see it that way. Okay, so fight's gonna go on bottom, but you can't be there. You're farming Blink, which is a perfectly fine reason to go top, because you don't need to do anything because you're farming Blink. But like I said, you need the option to be able to help your team. Both you and Ursa just killed a Pugna because he's by himself alone. It's odd, but okay. Stuff happens. We have a Blink. This is fine that you come bottom. I wouldn't expect, like, coordinated spokes in your bracket. I just want you to be on the right part of the map, generally speaking. Like, I don't need you to make coordinated plays. It just isn't necessary to win your games.
Particularly with a Sven, I would say.
Say that again?
I said particularly with the Sven.
Yeah, I mean, in general. But, like, Sven's a hero that, like, if you have... like, I literally had a game in my calibration that was, like, a 5K average, and I just tilted at, like, 25 minutes. And if I hadn't tilted, I would have just solo carried the game. Like, I just let it get the best of me. If you keep your fundamentals in check here, meaning, like, you're just playing the right part of the map, you put these items that you're getting, and then you kill people who are alone, and you force objectives like you're doing, like, you should just win every game in your bracket. Like, I was doing the same thing. Because what I'm saying by your bracket is literally a bracket where you can just out-execute people. So I can do it in a 5K because I'm 7K, and I'll out-execute 5K players. And if you just do this stuff, nobody in your bracket's doing it. So, like, or maybe a small percentage of them are doing it. So right now, little risky play, but you guys are really far ahead. This is just greed, though. So, like, there's really no reason to hit a tower when you're this far ahead when the rest of your team is also hitting a tower. So the way I think about this is, you ran away, you see all their team bottom. So in this case, you're ahead, so you want to force fights. But you want them to fight you in the most inconvenient, like, even setup that you can create. And what I mean by even is just same number of heroes. So what I mean by inconvenient is they were all just here. So then you run all the way here. And all, like, combined with the fact that they were all just here, and your 2 heroes are here, I would just immediately run over here, right? If say your 2 heroes were, like, right here coming through mid, then you can literally, like, chill here waiting for the enemy team to walk through your ward and your team to meet up with you and then kill them here. Either way, you want the enemy team to either feel pinned or feel the need to chase you. That's the 2 things you're looking to do. So right now, you're just giving them an opening. And if you're ahead and you just, like, group up with your strong hero, like, if you're strong, which you are, make yourself so strong they can't contest you, which is by putting yourself with the other guy that's super strong. The only exception to, like, this, what I'm saying is by putting yourself with the other guy to be even stronger, is if you're like an Ember Spirit type hero that's just unkillable in that given game. In that case, your best strength is actually to be able to join your team, but make the other team chase you around by yourself. But you're a Sven against Slark, Disruptor, you know, like, they have catch for you, and you're a Sven. You're not like a, you know, independent hero in that sense. So if you're going to apply pressure, do it around your team. This is just greedy. Like, it's just unnecessary. I did something similar in my game because I'm an idiot, and it's just something that can be completely avoided if we just stick with our team when if they're like all jungling, then in that case I'd shove the lane in and just back off and accept that they're all jungling. And that, like, if I don't feel like I can take objectives because the rest of my team is just Papega doing nothing, in that case I just try to shove in any lane I think I can safely and then get out. Feel free to ask any questions while I keep watching. Shit. Don't have any, that's absolutely fine.
I know we kind of started out, I had a hard time with the tri-line. But then the Slark didn't get level 6 until I think 13 minutes in. The issue from here now is that we keep feeding the Slark. He gets a bunch of agi stacks. Just
so my question for you is, when you think of the mid tier 2 tower, is there anything that comes to mind that should usually happen first?
Probably the Safelane tier 2.
Try again. What objective at this point in the game is just as important or more important and easier to control?
Roshan.
Okay. So, guess why your team is middle pushing this tier 2?
Because Roshan is not up?
Because you're sitting at the tier 2 hitting it.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, that's how Dota generally works. Doesn't matter how good or bad players are, honestly. They will instinctually follow the guy that's strong. If your Ursa is on their side of the map throwing, okay. Like, whatever. Nothing you can do about it. But you have to understand that 95% of games that you take the tier 2 tower, it's better to take Roche. So, if that's the case, if Roche isn't up, what are we doing?
If Roche isn't up, then we're trying to keep the lanes pushed out.
We're just keeping the lanes pushed out until Roche is up.
Okay.
That's the rule. Yeah. Like, this is the equivalent of going high ground. There's just no reason to ever do this. Like, just think to yourself, like, how hard is it to take Roche compared to this tower, right? And then once we take Roche, how easy it is to take this tower. And so a lot of times I think one of the most difficult decisions to make in Dota is to not make a decision. Like, to just say, oh, we just need to farm and get our items. Just farm and ramp it up. if you farm and like control the map and then take Roche, you're winning this game 100% of the time. Like you're just gonna win every single time. BSJ, that takes longer. I don't like it. I mean, sorry. Would you rather do that every game, or would you rather have the 25% of these games that turn into a 70-minute slugfest where you throw and you spend the entire game wallowing in your sorrow because it takes an extra 35 minutes to actually lose the game? Okay, like, you know, what would you prefer? You know, like whenever people give that reasoning, that kind of stuff. So it's just fundamental, like that. There's no reason to push tier 2 mid until you have Roche. There are exceptions, right? Nothing in Dota is 100%, but in general, at your bracket, I think you'll just gain MMR if you just follow the fundamentals, because the exceptions are so few and far between, and the exceptions are only slightly better, meaning like it's slightly better to do that exception than it is to do the regular thing, and that only starts mattering when everyone is making really good decisions, right? And then like they make the slightly better decisions than you. But at this bracket, if you're just fundamentally playing safe and like taking objectives one step at a time, you'll just beat people because they're not doing that. Okay, so solo kill, push out the lane. This is like farm our BKBs. Me and Ursa, let's get a BKB, take a Roche, and then kill them all. That's how I would think about it. You got bounties, that's fine. Ursa's really feeling himself. So what do we think about when an ally hero dies? Okay, I'm gonna say this better. How does that Ursa doing that affect you until he's alive again? What does that do to you?
Because he's our momentum hero.
Okay, so what does that do for the map then?
It makes it more dangerous, so I guess keep the lanes pushed out that we can, and if a lane is too dangerous to go to, stay away from it.
Basically, what I think about it is you are no longer at any threat to take any objectives, right?
Yes.
So we immediately have to shift to the mindset that whatever objectives they can possibly get off that kill need to be prevented until our Ursa comes back to life. Okay, so in this case, you're doing the right thing. We push mid because it's close, like the lane's close to our tower. They just killed Ursa in the jungle. Where are we running from here?
I would say just getting back. The fact that the fight happened bottom means that I would probably just go to our jungle then.
I would retreat this way because they could TP the shrine with Disruptor and cut you off. Mm-hmm. So I would run this way, and then I would make my way here to jungle here. Why here?
Because I'm next to the lane. Whenever the lane then is.
Because they were all here, and their closest objective's here, right?
Yes.
So we're jungling here, and when will we go to this lane?
We'll go to that lane whenever it's ready to be pushed out, and we see that the teammates are somewhere else.
And we see that the opponent is pushing mid. Okay. So the way I think about it is, what's their objective? If they take that objective, what am I going to do? So in this case, if you insert say your Nyx was the one that fed, or maybe Lina, for instance. Maybe you have the same mindset, but maybe you still want to fight them 4v5 at your own tier 1, okay? So in that case, I would jungle like right here. Because if I still want to fight them, then I want to be near here, right? I'd push in the lane and then be ready to fight here. But in this case, since your strongest hero's dead and you're like, I probably don't want to fight them at this tier 1, that's their objective. If they do anything else on the map, do we care?
No, we don't care.
We don't care, right? That's why I'm pointing this out. So, like, in that case, just don't be an idiot, meaning, like, don't, like, you know, farm this way. If they split up and farm, you can just farm all this, right? Because, you know, but the minute, if you go here first, it's better because by the time you get here, you'll see whether or not they're doing this. If they're doing this, then you go this way. If they're not doing this, then you just go this way. So it's like, do you see how I can come to that conclusion, and maybe you can come to that conclusion yourself too?
Yeah, I see that now.
Okay.
I would say that's an issue I have. Whenever I walk by a camp, I want to hit it.
Yes.
So, yeah, see, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, and I think that this decision to go left was punishable, and that's why it was bad. I can only tell you, there's games where, like, I'm playing in 5K in one of my calibration games, for instance, and I did all this fundamental shit correct, and I just went 20-0 and 12. And then there's, like, 3 times where I'm like, God, I know I'm punishable, but these guys are 5K in my Sven game, and then I died every single time. And, like, 5K players are still good enough to punish me, okay? Like, in your bracket, maybe they'll only punish you 1 out of 3 of those times. But if anything you do is punishable, it just leads to potentially getting punished. So my decision would be, the perfect decision would be to do this. and then from there decide, while you did this, because that's punishable by Disruptor TPing in while Slark ran this way. That's how I look at that being exactly punished. And so it's okay if you end up making that decision thinking it's not punishable, and then it's okay if you make that decision and you think it's not punishable and then you get punished. You just have to realize, self-reflection, why? Why was it punishable? And then try to learn from it. So, what's my problem with this fight?
It's going uphill.
So, if we're ahead, who controls what objectives are being taken?
If we're ahead, then Ursa's controlling it.
And what team?
Oh, the dire side. Our team.
What's our objective?
Our objective would be Rosh.
What the fuck are we doing in their jungle? So the way dead lane works is when you're ahead, unless you're just keeping them, once they're, the dead lane concept kind of ends once they're in base. Like once they're in that portion where they're like stuck in base, okay? So like up until that point, the reason the dead lane exists is because you're not strong enough to control all 3 lanes without getting picked off. Okay? So why is bottom the dead lane here?
That's where they have towers and vision.
Well, no, because Roche is our objective, and guess what 2 lanes are next to Roche? Top and mid. So we don't care about bottom. Bottom literally means nothing. So, like, why do we ever push bottom in this case?
I guess if they are controlling the other lanes.
If they're controlling top, and we want them to come bottom. So we push it in, and then we leave. We don't want to fight them here, because there's literally nothing to gain. But we need them to not... Like, one way to get them out of top is by forcing them to come bottom. So that's the only reason we'd ever go bottom. Like, in any circumstance where our objective is Roche. Force them somewhere else, and then go back to Roche. But in this type of scenario, I think you guys are just up by 15k. Like, just control top and middle, and who cares about bottom? Like, they should have to respond to us, not the other way around. So, long story short, you can try to command your team in these types of scenarios, but at the same time, you just need to be top and mid, right? Like, the time that you went bottom to push it once should have just been stuck top. And you can call for your teammates to come top. If your Ursa just keeps running bottom and you've told him to Roche, might just lose those games, okay? But if you're, like, insistent on these objectives, or at least, like, casually mentioning it, it will, I assure you, a higher percentage of the time work out. So the way objectives work is this tower, it's usually these 3 towers that die first, right? It doesn't always the exception. In this case, like, they did some weird shit bottom and UT beat here and we just killed the Pugna. Like, yeah, mistakes or, like, weird scenarios result in exceptions. But, like, generally speaking, once one tier 2 tower has gone down, sometimes 0, it's just better to take Roche. Like, it's just better, because at that point, they're kind of, like, pinned here. Like, especially when all the tier 1s are dead. They're just kind of pinned here. Okay, the way I look at it is this. With their towers, they should be pinned like this. If they have these 2 towers, they should be pinned like this. If they have this tower gone, and then these 2 towers are alive, they should be pinned like this. Right? Like, it's just based on how they should get pinned, based on the towers they have left, right?
Yeah.
So, if these 2 towers are alive, the reason why Roche is so natural is because if, look at these 2 towers, they should be pinned over here. And this is Roche. So, they should be stuck down here. And it's just something to think that, like, their only safe places are near their buildings, for the most part. So, like, if this is the area right here, then what you can look to do a lot of times, like say they have these 2 towers and this one, you can just force them to come here. And then you take control of this area. And then where do they go? If you force them to come bottom, and then you take control of this area, and that's the only place they can go, they're basically forced to run bottom, and then you take Roche. Like, those are like, these are, it seems so... Like, it honestly is so easy to practice if you just keep in mind every single game. So the issue is that you're bottom here. That's just the issue. If you're on the wrong part of the map, when it comes to your objectives, random shit's just gonna happen that shouldn't happen. I don't even care if this fight goes 5 for 2. It should be 5 for 2 with an instant Roche. Like, rather than a 5 for 2 at the bottom half of the map. It's just... you know, I use EV because it's like in chess and stuff. It's just EV. Like the estimated value of the fight going on here is way lower than if it's up here. So we finally get to Roche. We talked about this. Eventually happens. No matter how low we go, eventually the right play is made. Don't have BKB yet. So your Ursa's on some shit for sure. Fast forwarding a bit. We'll go to the other game in a second here. So it's been about 40 minutes, so I'll make sure I get all the other game into. We got about 5 minutes left. 45-minute session. You're supposed to be like, what? It doesn't work when you just call my bluff, dude.
I paid for an hour.
It doesn't work when I call my fucking bluff, dude. Fuck. Okay. So this is similar to what's happening. Your team's fighting bottom again. Did Roche die?
I believe it did, but I think they killed.
No, Roche did not die. I was like, I don't think it died, but your team's bottom again. In this case, you just need BKB. So I'm fine for you to... Okay, so now you have it. It's not in your...
It's in backpack.
Yikes.
Okay, dude.
Better now than later. Or better now than never, I mean.
Yeah.
Same thing, just controlling Roche. Wait till our Pepega Ursa stops doing whatever he's doing. So in this case, will you ever TP bottom lane?
No, because we still want Rosh.
Yes. Will you ever go bottom lane?
After we have Rosh, yeah.
Maybe. Like, meaning, like, if they show 4 heroes here and you want to run bottom, push it out real quick, but have a TP ready to fight them at Roche, why would it be okay in this game to run bottom and be ready to TP back to Roche?
Because we still have the shrine.
Or, that is true, but what else can you factor in? Why would it not be okay for them to do the same thing against your lineup?
Because if they TP over here and they aren't strong enough to fight us, then they have to run back to the other side.
Okay, quiz question. How long does it take Ursa to Roche?
Like, not very long.
How long does it take this lineup to Roche?
A very long time.
Okay, so that's why you're allowed to run here and then be ready to TP back, because by the time that you're forced to TP back, you all already have cleared like 2 waves. But like against Ursa, if they do this, like maybe they'll clear 1 creep and then they're forced to TP back and they've like surrendered control, and like maybe Roche is already dead by that point. Okay, so like something to consider is not only like if your objective's Roche, what's the prime objective for the enemy team? To stop you from Roshing. Like, and one of the best ways to do that is to take it, right? So like here's a case where when I see this, right, my Ursa's dead. I see this situation right now. Run bottom. For the exact reasons, right? Because 2 things we're doing while our hero's dead. 1, preventing any objectives from them to take. 2, setting up for any objectives we can take when he's alive.
All right.
So bottom right now, is there any threat for them to take an objective? Yeah, potentially Roche. Can you get back in time by the time they do it? Yes. So this, like, if you're thinking about Roche as the only thing that fucking matters in this game for the last 10 minutes, all of this is so much easier, by the way. Like, every decision you make is so much easier if you just focus on whatever objective needs to be taken at any point. Like, earlier when you TP'd to safe lane, if you knew that this tower was your objective, you'd never do that. You're never allowed to TP away from your objective. That's a better, like, overall higher explanation of, like, never TPing to your own safe lane. But, like, in this case, I'm never TP bottom. Earlier, never TP top, right? Never TP away from the objective that you want. That's like a more accurate description of the same thing. So I hate this fight because, guess what? Ursa's dead. I would much rather you be doing what Lena's doing and then be ready to TP in with this Ursa. Okay. I think we're good with this game. I think this game's been thoroughly thrown enough that I don't, like, even though it's still 15k, like, I don't need to watch it anymore. Like, against Slark, like, if that happens 1 or 2 more times, you're just gonna lose.
That's what happened. Yeah, we just kept feeding him Magi. So.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes it... Against a hero like Slark, it becomes harder and harder to not do exactly what you're doing. Meaning feeding over and over again.
Yes.
Okay.
We had a similar issue in this game. I'm the Ursa this time.
Okay.
And I'm strong. I had an easy lane. I basically free farmed. And then I didn't take Rosh when I had the chance.
Yeah, so one thing that it comes down to as in any role, but especially off lane, because usually your timings are based around your carry. is understanding what your carry does. Literally what your carry does with a lead. Slark controls the map, farms it, out-farms them, dewards them, and eventually, like, just snowballs that lead into kills and or just out-farming them because they're forced to group up. Ursa forces Roche. Like, that's just all there is to it. Like, when Ursa's ahead, the way he keeps his lead is Roshing. And, like, that's what you need to know when you're playing Ursa. That's what you need to know when you're playing with an Ursa. These are all, like, very important things to know, like, what each core does with that lead. So when you're, like, learning this kind of stuff, you can literally just watch pro games and be like, what does this team do when this guy is winning, right? Like, every hero treats games differently, ahead and behind. Like, how they recover is different, and how they snowball a lead is different. So, like, you know, with Ursa, it should never be... There should never be a game where, with your lead, you don't take Roche. Like, that should just never happen. Watching this lane, I mean, you said it's pretty free farm, and I'm noticing it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Pudge and a...
Pudge tech, that's about as bad of a lane as it gets, so.
Yep.
I saw your items, they're so far so fine, so I'm not commenting on anything. Fast forwarding. Yeah, it's kind of hard to teach too many lane mechanics when in your bracket just nobody gives you a lane to deal with. So sometimes when I'm in your type of coaching sessions, like some 2K players, they just lose all their lanes and like their laning mechanics are really bad. But your laning mechanics are definitely above 2K, so that's not what's holding you back here. So just letting you know from my perspective, it's not like there's nothing for you to improve on your lane mechanics, but your lane mechanics are clearly good enough to just win the lane. And you're picking heroes to win the lane as well. So it's clearly issues past that. So at this point, you have your item sitting at base with Courier. Pretty big deal. Whenever you're ahead, giving yourself items as quickly as possible is a huge deal. Like right now, that Courier just left with your without your Blade of Attack. You've had phase boots for about 3 minutes. You have no mana now. These are pretty common trends that I see. Is just the fundamentals of flying yourself the Courier or regenning up. So, like, the reason why the Courier is even more important to get your phase boots is fly yourself some mangoes with those phase boots. Like, why is this morbid purchase right now absolute trash? Any ideas? Like, you can give me, like, 4 reasons.
Well, I have no mana. So,
okay.
And I have a bunch of regen already.
And you have a Tango and a Salve, so you don't need it. And you don't have enough money to buy mana, because you bought it, and it's going to delay your Vlads because you could have spent 700 gold on the recipe plus the Sage's Mask, had an extra 125 gold here, and spent that on 2 mangoes.
Okay.
So these are all, like, it's just so fundamental in the sense that, like, you're literally playing a game of Dota and handicapping yourself with items. Like, last game we saw it with your regen management in terms of, like, you lingered in lane a while. Same thing's happening here. Like, sense of urgency, and the only way I'm actually going to tell you, like, I'm going to use a Dota chess reference because it's actually relevant here, and I think it should, like, it carries on in every game I've ever played now that I think about it. Updating yourself on your status in every single thing you're doing is super important. Like, just checking with yourself. Like, when I say that in Dota chess, it's literally like, what is this unit doing for me? Okay, do I buy or sell it? Like, when can I get rid of it? In this case, it's like, what is my situation? Do I have health and mana problems? What's going to happen soon? When I get level 6, what do I want to do with it? What's coming next for me? What are my plans? Like, what am I doing right now and what's next? That's really all you have to concern yourself with. Literally, like, what am I doing right now? So earlier it was, I'm farming my phase boots. That's all you're doing, right? Like, yeah. While you're playing the actual game of Dota, all you were doing was farming your phase boots. Like, yes. That's your objective at, like, the current moment. We don't need to know what we're doing. Like, we don't need to know right now when we're taking Roche, right? We literally need to know we are getting phase boots. Once we have our phase boots, we say, what are we doing with those phase boots? I'm asking you right now, what are those phase boots for? Why did I buy phase boots?
We bought phase boots so that if someone comes to our lane, we run them down.
Okay, so what do we need in order to run them down?
Phase boots.
I mean, after we have phase boots.
Mana.
Health and mana, right?
Yeah.
Like, if we're half health, who cares if we're running them down if they just kill us, right? And if we don't have any mana, who cares if we're not overpowered, right? So, like, right when I get my phase boots, I know I'm going to run at this guy. I know I need full health and mana. Or as close to it as possible. And so I immediately look at my stuff. Okay, I don't need any health items, right? I don't need any mana. I do need mana items, though. So what I think about this is, if I know my objective is to farm these phase boots, What's more important than anything in the world?
Getting those phase boots.
Flying the fucking phase boots out. So that courier should literally never leave your base without your phase boots on it. Like, maybe you can let somebody else have it first, okay? In this game, why didn't you just get a Midas? Like, meaning, if you look at your, like, the reason why you don't go Midas generally is because, like, there's other items that, like, make you more powerful. You're basically going Midas right now in terms of your strength in this lane. You literally have no mana regen items. You have, instead of a Midas, you have 5 armor. That's, like, what I'm looking at. Like, that's what's been accomplished with your, let's see, Chainmail's 550, Blades of Attack is 430, and Morbid's 900. That's effectively 1,900 gold that you just have. That's not being used. Your net worth is 3,100. So
2/3.
you're gimping yourself by 65% of your net worth. Okay, like, that's what I meant at the start of the session by fundamentals. Like, if you do everything correctly and the other guy has all of his items, you're just gonna lose. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, at some point, all these things need to be trimmed up. So I try to put it in perspective whenever I look at net worths. Like, it is pretty alarming. This like, I know I'm kind of like teasing you a bit, okay, but like, this happens a lot, okay? Like, this is almost every session 3K or below. Massive item things. Like, just no sense of urgency to fly themselves their net worth. Let's just win the lane and pressure the tower 60% worse. Like, like, that's how I look at it. Okay, so either way, what?
I said that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, it is, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, once you fly your items out and I can teach you how to hit, like, timings and stuff, that's, like, completely different. But until then, I can't teach you, like, yeah, you should be doing this, this, and this because you have phase boots. But I can point out how much you're losing by not having these phase boots. Okay, so taking the stout shields out pretty bad, I'd say, by the way. If you didn't notice that, like, definitely just take out the Tangos or the Salve if you're going to put the Morbid Mask in. Still no phase boots. Courier's leaving base again. Done harping on it, just reminding you how big of a deal this is. You got your phase boots at 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
I remember when I fly in that.
Oh, you didn't even fly him out. You just TP'd the base.
Okay.
I think that TP was fine.
Okay.
Meaning, like, when it happened, you probably wouldn't have had to TP if you had phase boots, honestly. You could just walk away at 500 move speed because you're Ursa in this patch. So I'm fine with you returning back top because you don't have Vlad yet. I'd say Vlad's is probably pretty important to pressure. But you literally got bullied out of lane and forced to TP because you didn't have your phase boots. You didn't get the kill on Pudge, you suicided because you didn't have phase boots. Okay, so... we now have our Vlads. Our Vlads would have probably been done at like 8 minutes because we wouldn't have had the base and we would have had the components already on us other than the Morbid. So when it comes to stuff like Midas, what's the benefit of going the recipe before the gloves?
Yeah, whenever we're about to die.
What do gloves do for us that the recipe doesn't?
Well, the gloves gives us attack speed.
Okay, so why would we ever not get the, like, what benefit or what negative side of taking the gloves first happens?
So if we take the gloves first, and we're going back to lane where we can buy gloves, then we have to have the recipe flown.
Yeah, so it's delaying our Midas by a minimum of, like, the time it takes the courier to get to lane.
Okay.
Right? It's the same idea with your Vlads, right? Did you need that Morbid to continue winning your lane?
No, I didn't.
No, so then you fly yourself the Sage's Mask and the Vlad's recipe, anything else you need from base as a part of it, first. Very simple, should be done every single time. You should ask yourself, do I need this Morbid first, kind of thing. Like, there are games where, like, if you're against, like, a Bristle or something and you're trading with him a lot, that you may need that Morbid Mask for some regen, right? But this game was not one of them. So every time you buy an item, ask yourself, what's the greediest way I can buy it? What's the least greedy way I can buy it? Which one do I need this game? Very, like, you know, always err on the side of caution, but in this case, you definitely did not need that Morbid for, in my opinion, like, after talking to you about it, they're pretty obvious reasons, right?
Yeah.
You had 3 Tangos and a Salve left, and Morbid gives you regen. Okay. So still having mana problems this game. Okay, you flew yourself some stuff. Okay with what you're doing here. In this case, I would say this is an exception to normally having this lane be your objective. Why would that be?
because I'm supposed to be taking Rosh right now.
Yes. So when you're an Ursa, generally speaking, in your experience, if you have an Ursa on the enemy team and he's got phase boots Vlad's at 12 minutes, what are you doing in response to that Ursa?
Staying away from him.
Okay.
Hoping that he doesn't take Rosh.
So if the enemy wants to stay away from you, what should you be doing?
In Rosh Pit.
You should be going somewhere that makes them either deal with you or you're getting a free objective.
Yeah.
That's top, right? So
Yeah.
that's how I think about Dota. Like, well, what does this hero want to be doing? Like, and if they know I want to be doing that, what are they going to do to respond? And how can I create them? How can I make them do what they don't want to do? So if I'm an Ursa at this stage in the game, I know they don't want to deal with me. So go ahead.
So let's say I'm on Juggernaut here.
Yeah.
Would being in this lane be correct right now?
I would definitely be bottom by default. But the minute I see you here, I'd be like, lol, and TP top. I'd be like, what the fuck is he doing bottom and just TP top? Like, that's what I would do. I'd be bottom by default because I would assume you're here. And then when I see you here, I'd be like, what? And then I just TP top because I'm avoiding you anyway. That's what I would be doing. Last thing they should ever be doing is confronting you here. If you think about it from their perspective, why the hell are they here? Why, if as a Jug, why wouldn't I just force a trade top against you here? I'm avoiding you, and you're not threatening the one objective that Ursa threatens. So obviously here it's working for you, but it's because the opponent's messing up, not because it's the right play. This fight could just be happening at Roche, like, in which case they would actually have to respond to you. The choices here are both the same in the sense that you want them to fight you. One of them is you getting a tier 1, the other one is you getting a Roche. Right? Like, that's how I look at it. And Ursa, oddly enough, usually people threaten towers first because towers die faster. Ursa actually kills Roche faster. So, like, if you go bottom here, and Jug just trades with you top, he'll probably take that tower as faster than you do. Maybe not because you have Pugna Jakiro, but in comparison, if you just walk into Roche and Jug's like, I don't want to fight this guy, I'm going to go push bottom in response. You ain't pushing shit by the time you're done with Roche, right? Like, literally nothing's dying during the time you're taking Roche. So another consideration is how fast you take it. I said that last game, but it's a consideration here. Have we not taken Roche yet?
No, we haven't.
Okay. Let me see what leads up to this. It's always what leads up to it. I was busy talking
at like 10 minutes, and I don't take it until 15.
Let's see what happens here. Let's watch the entire 2 minutes of shit that leads up to this. So we take this fight bottom. So be it. I'm like, it's not great. It's not ideal, but we are forcing them to fight us, and we are forcing an objective. It may be the wrong objective, but in the sense that it's not like you shouldn't be taking this objective. It's just not as important as the other objective. You get your Blink Dagger. Cool. That's a bad TP. Why is that a bad TP?
Because I could have gone top.
Because it saved you like 15 seconds of walking, and if Jug sees you TP, what does that mean for him?
He can just do whatever he wants.
He can avoid wherever you are now, and he's got 80 seconds where you can't get to him. Think about it that way. Every time you TP, there's massive impact on what you're doing. Take 15 seconds of inefficiency. Don't farm that camp. Don't TP instead of walk, you know? It's the same, like, principle where, like, if you're TPing like that, you're also the guy, like you said, that farms every camp you walk by. I mean, this is just crazy.
I end up feeding.
What's up?
I fed the Razor here.
Yeah, so this is a play that it just doesn't happen if you know your only objective's Roche. It just doesn't happen. Like, if you say my objective's Roche and you keep that in mind at all times, you're just not doing this. So, your two ways of getting Roche. Okay. Are they avoiding you? They're avoiding you, right?
But yeah, they should.
Meaning in general, they'll avoid you. Like, unless they 5-man, they're avoiding you. So on a standard situation, one hero is not going to come to you, right? So what I do is earlier on, since I'm super strong with phase Vlads at like 9 minutes, if you hit your timings, by the way, I would just walk into Roche. And if they follow me, then I back out. But how many heroes have to follow me to do it?
Probably at least 3.
At least 3. In that case, I walked into Roche for 15 seconds, and I took 3 of their heroes 15 seconds, and backed off. Effective. The minute they disperse, I do it again. What am I doing in the meantime? Like, while they are potentially dispersing. Sorry.
Oh, while they're dispersing, then I just jungle next to it.
Yeah, jungle right next to it, right? Like, why? Because we're still farming a blink, and right when we know what our objective is, but we don't want to take it at that current moment, we just jungle right next to it, right? So that's all we do. So, and then if they all go top, are we ever willing to TP bottom?
No, because our objective's still wrong.
Yeah, but maybe we can farm our way towards bottom, force someone to go bottom, then TP back top, and make them come back to Roche. If anyone on their team goes bottom. Right? Like, the way I look at it is, what did I say when you're winning your lane at level 6 on Sven? What is your objective against the Slark at level 4?
To stop his farm, stop him from getting level 6.
Okay. In regards to pushing the tower or staticking the wave, what was my exact description of the situation you are creating for Slark?
Because you said I should push the lane into his tower.
I said you should static the wave such that he can't walk up. So what? What happens there?
Oh, so if he can't walk up, then he's not getting farm and he's not getting XP.
And what's he gonna do?
He can't do anything.
He's gonna leave. And then once he's left, what do?
Then I try to take an objective.
You force somebody back there by forcing the objective, right?
Yeah.
So is that not literally the same idea as this Roche? You literally force them there, and then you force them to leave, and then you force them back, and then you force them to leave, and then you force them back, right?
It's cat and mouse.
It's literally saying, I'm gonna do this in the meantime, like meaning in between times you can hit jungle camps, you can push in mid real quick, but you're literally creating a situation they don't want to be in, forcing them to leave that area. So like in this case, they don't want to go bottom because they want to contest you Roshing, right? So you force them bottom, and then once they're bottom, you TP right back to Roche, right? Because most of the time, if you walk bottom, say you farm this area, and then you walk to mid, and then you walk bottom, how are any of them going to get to bottom?
They're going to have to TP.
Yeah, they're going to have to TP, and then when they TP and you TP, how much of this lane are they pushing if you TP here and they want to stop you?
If they want to stop me, they're not pushing.
They're not pushing this lane at all. And then they're running all the way back here, and then you make your way farming again. Same thing, right? Like, you're literally going to dictate, what are the other 4 heroes on your team doing during this time?
They can be doing whatever they need.
Whatever the fuck they want. Who's out farming who if they're following you around while the other 4 on your team are doing whatever the fuck they want? We are definitely out farming them, right? Like,
yes.
That's the idea of these, like, space-making carries. Like, you're not fighting all the time. Just because you have a Blink Dagger and Ursa doesn't mean you have to charge into 5 heroes and fight them, okay? What that means is you're the strongest hero on the map, so you dictate what's going on in the game. Like, that's what that means, okay? Like, so when you're offlaning, when you're the carry, when you're a mid laner, like Queen of Pain or whatever, think about what makes you strong. Is it that you're unkillable? Is it that you're unapproachable? Like, a hero like Ursa's unapproachable. So those types of heroes, Bristle, Ursa, maybe like a Medusa sometimes, maybe a Huskar. These types of heroes kind of just plant themselves in a lane and say, I dare you, right? Like, that's in like the early to mid game, right? Like 8-15 minutes in, somewhere in that region. Isn't that exactly what all those heroes do? Like,
yeah.
Like Huskar just sits in a lane and says, I dare you to come fight me. And so once the guy leaves the lane, what does Huskar do?
He pushes the objective.
He pushes the tower, right? And then if they come, he either chooses to fight them because there's not enough of them, or he backs off because there's 4 of them. And then the minute they disperse again, he just does the same shit again. Like, it's literally rinse and repeat. So in this game, you're an Ursa. Like, when it comes to these heroes, like at the very basic level, Ursa's always Roche. Nothing like the tier 1 towers. Why do you ever take tier 1s as Ursa?
After you have the Roche.
No, it is literally enabling you to take Roche. So if you think to myself, like I need this tier 1 mid to die first, or this tier 1 top to die first before Roche, then that's the objective. But it all centers around the fact that you need to get Roche. So if you think Roche is my objective, and they're camping 4 heroes top, say every tower in the game's alive, they're camping 4 heroes top to stop you from Roshing, what is now your objective to get the Roche? Like, what needs to happen first?
You force them to go bottom.
Yeah, and so now that tier 1 tower bottom is your objective. But that's your objective because Roche is your objective. and you need them to leave Roche to get Roche. So you go to the opposite side of the map. It's like if you're on Radiant, you could easily push. You could just, if I'm Ursa and I know that they're camping like this, I'll stay in my safe lane forever. And if I think that based on the timings in the game, that because like if I'm Ursa in my own safe lane, why is it unlikely that they would come push my lane if they're good?
Because I know that I'm strong, and like if they come to push my lane, then I just kill them.
Okay, if 3 or 4 heroes show up in your lane bottom and you're Radiant and you're Ursa, what's the proper response usually?
Oh, just go to Roche.
Just fucking TP to middle and take Roche. It's like, I dare you to push my tower bottom. By the time you take it, I've killed Roche. Like, I dare you. And like, that's what I would do, right? If 3 heroes show up in my lane, it's like it's just, if they do that and you know that, you're just gonna instantly respond, right? Like, you're just gonna be like, oh, like we could fight them, but why? I'm just gonna TP and kill Roche. But if you're on Dire, it's kind of the opposite, where if they group up, basically what your idea is because you're such a high threat of Roche and you're strong, the enemy team should literally be able to do nothing on the map because they're scared of you Roshing. And then if they're scared of you Roshing and they're sitting on the Roche because they're scared of you, then you force them away from the Roche. And if they don't leave, then in the meantime, you're literally just killing tier 1 after tier 1. So what heroes in the game, on average, in a conceptual manner, counter Ursa?
I would say someone that can man up against him, so probably, or stop him from rushing, so probably Monkey King.
I've got a great one for you. How does TA sound? Why would TA be a great Ursa counter?
She has refraction.
Ignore refraction. If Ursa goes and pressures bottom at 15 minutes to steer TA away from Roche, what's she doing?
She's just going to push the tower.
He's going to fucking kill Roche.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Because she can take it.
Yeah. Right? Like, and if TA wants to farm bottom and Ursa needs to take Roche, well, isn't there just a trap in there? So they'll know exactly when the Roche is happening, so TA feels comfortable being bottom, unlike most other heroes, because they know exactly the second you start hitting Roche, right?
Yeah.
But, so, the heroes that counter Ursa are the ones that make it really hard for him to get Roche. Like, whether that means by contesting him, or most notably, making it so he can't do, like I'm giving you all these ways that you can force Roche, right? Like, you can force them bottom, you can just do it directly sometimes. But if certain heroes take away that approach, either the direct approach, or, like, meaning, if they have an enemy ET, you're never just gonna directly walk into Roche if the ET's around, right? Yeah. But you're also never gonna indirectly take Roche, because there's a TA on the enemy team. So, like, this is why when I say stuff like this hero counters this hero, and on paper it doesn't really seem like that, but like I can tell you from professional Dota experience, I've probably played 25 Ursa games and qualifiers, and all the good teams, like TA's been one of the most common heroes I play against, because that it's just so hard to get Roche as an Ursa. Yeah, the refraction's like another point that just adds to it, but like it's so hard to take Roche as Ursa when they have a TA. So it's just something where this is like, my point is not to make this lesson about Ursa, okay? My point is to make this lesson about how you think about how a hero works. Like, when I'm winning on any hero, what am I doing with it? What does this hero do when he's winning? Like, the way I view that is, in an ideal world, if 9 other heroes did not exist in this game, what would I be doing? And if the strongest hero is you, that's what you should be doing, is whatever that is. Like, if no one else existed, what am I doing? And so something I talked about in my other session was, if I'm the second strongest hero in the game, how should I judge what I'm doing?
Based off what the strongest hero in the game's doing?
I would literally say, what are my 2 best options? And where's the other guy? I'll go to the other one. That's what I would do. I'd be like, what's my first option? What's my second option? If my first option's Roche, but my second option's tier 1 bottom, and there's strong heroes sitting mid, I'm going bottom, right? Like, in this case, that kind of applies. Because Razor kind of tells you to fuck off, right? Like, Razor doesn't, like, hard counter you, in the sense that, like, if you get a +1, like an axe stun or something, you can kill Razor. But, like, if I'm a lifestealer in this kind of game and I'm Ursa, I literally die to no one on their team, except for Razor. So I'm going to ask myself, where are the 2 places on the map I want to be? And if there's a Razor there, I'm not going to that one. And all of my TP decisions, all of my map movements will be based on the Razor. Because if I'm the second strongest hero, it's very easy to play, because I just have to dodge the strongest. It gets a little more complicated when you're like a support hero or you're a core with a rough start, because at that point you're weaker than like 5 heroes in the game. So at that point, what I usually think is, what's the opponent's objective? If I'm a weak hero, it's like, what's the opponent's objective and what's my team's objective? Do my best to stay away from either of those. And so this seems like a weird thing to talk about. It's kind of random, but here's your 2 choices if you're weak. Or I'll give you your list of choices in these situations if you're the Sage hero. You either 1, think about what I just said and then avoid whatever those objectives are. 2, you can like stall whatever their objective is because you're like able to feed yourself as like a weaker hero in the game, but at the meantime you're like creating space for your team. 3, you just follow the strong people, because even though you're weak, maybe they're strong because of you. Maybe you enable them to be stronger, or they make you strong, or at least impactful because, you know, they're strong and whatever you do. Like maybe you offer a stun, but it's only good because you have an Ursa. That's really all your choices are. Like, that's what you got to do as weak. So I've presented you with what you do when you're strong and what you do when you're weak. And if you think about the game that way, it's just going to become much like... Honestly, key issues is focusing on one central objective. If you can solve that problem for yourself, your decision-making ain't going to be perfect, okay? Like, it ain't going to be perfect. But, like, none of this shit will be happening. I'm, like, highlighting this mistake because, like, when an average viewer looks at this, it's like, what? Like, when I look at it, like, when you look at yourself, you're probably like, what? Like, what am I doing? And so I don't need you to know like these advanced, like, force them away, do all this kind of maneuvers, because in your bracket you're not gonna have to do that. Just play around Roche for like, what will happen is if I tell you on Ursa with your lead, play around Roche, you're not gonna go bottom. And then what's gonna happen is, guess how I learned to do the things I'm talking to you about? I literally went around Roche and I was like, well, fuck, they're just sitting on Roche. And then after like 5 games of Ursa where they just sat on Roche every time, I had to figure out some way to make them not sit on Roche anymore. And I'm like, well, shit. And then, like, you know, I just learned to adapt by making them move away from Roche. That's like how players learn this kind of shit, is they do the right thing that they think is correct, and if somebody counterplays it, they're like, oh. So in your bracket, because virtually, on average, the counterplay potential of the other team is going to be way lower, meaning, like, they're not going to do the right thing to counterplay you. All we have to do is know what you're supposed to do. And so with Ursa, it's roshing. With Lifestealer, it's kind of just camping a lane. With Sven, it's kind of just like camping a lane and pressuring it when they're gone, and then like farming your blink and killing people. And then your blink is like a pickoff item. Your BKB is a teamfight item. So if you think about what items represent for you, then if you say your next objective is Roche, and you're like, in order to get this Roche, we have to kill them. In order to kill them, we have to fight them. In order to fight them, I need this item. Like, that's how or this level, or this talent, or, you know, whatever. But in this case, we're now playing around Roche after we've kind of surrendered our control of the game. We've been playing around Roche. You even went and sentry'd it. We saw that. Oh, you do see. I was wondering what was going on there. Figured something weird was happening. Okay. Not a huge fan of BKB here, because when you look at your team, are you the one that has to go in first?
No, the axe should be.
Okay. And are you the one that has to show on map to be survivable?
No.
Who
I
does?
should be off map.
Who does?
Who has to show on map to be survivable?
Yeah, like, I'm saying, like, if you're showing in lanes, why am I talking about survivability?
I guess because if you're showing in lanes, then they know that they can either go to
You're vulnerable.
or stay away from, yeah,
Right?
you're vulnerable.
So,
If, like,
who on your
I'm an
team
Ursa,
should be
so I
showing
can
in
mix
lanes?
them all, yeah.
Who should be showing in lanes?
Probably the Pugna.
Kind of, but try again.
Bristleback.
He just got done feeding doing it. Okay, yeah, Bristleback. Like, yeah, Pugna can show and, like, nuke them down, but primarily you're gonna have Bristleback walking down lanes, okay? So, this is another concept to think about. So, what does BKB do for any hero? It allows them to fight back when they get initiated onto, and it allows them to go in first. Yeah, there's some other reasons, right? But wouldn't that encompass like 90% of the time that you buy a BKB?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
I'd say maybe the other 10-20% is when you need it to follow up, like on somebody else, meaning like they go in first and you're the damage, and you need to follow up on their going in. So if you think about the way this game gets played out, Your Bristleback should be walking down lanes. Your Pugna and Jakiro are probably nuking dangerous waves, right? Like, that's probably what's happening. They're, like, nuking them as much as possible off map. And so, if you think about the game that way, and you're the one playing off map, what item would I rather you have here?
An item that allows me to farm or allows me to be aggressive.
Okay. So you have two choices. Legitimately two choices after this Blink Vlads. What do you think those are?
I'd say Basher and I guess Desolate?
Midas. Your other choice.
Oh, yeah.
One farms, one's
I guess
aggressive. Right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
this patch is Midas. Like, usually people rush it. Like, I'd be perfectly fine this game the way you played it. You basically rushed a Midas in terms of the way you bought items. Like, you were effectively playing with no net worth. But the point is, like, if your plan is to play off map and you think to yourself, I just want to farm until Bash or BKB, why not just buy a Midas while you're doing it? Like, why not just do that? But, like, in this case, I wouldn't go Midas here. Like, I would have either gone Midas right at the start or not at all. That kind of thing. I probably would have gone Midas this game because I think you're unapproachable other than Razor. And so if you just play the map away from Razor while buying a Midas, you can just do whatever the hell you want, really. In this patch, it's generally pretty hard to force objectives as compared to old patches, just because of how slow-paced the game is with the creeps giving less gold, as well as the fact that, like, all these, like, damage items and stuff on most heroes got nerfed, like Wraith Bands and stuff. Obviously, that doesn't affect Ursa that much, but just generally the patch is slower because of that. So a lot of people, that's why Midas is so popular. So, basically, like, what I'm saying is, if you play in these games and you build phase Vlads, and then you just find yourself farming a lane without being contested anyways, that's when you could have considered Midas. Have you heard my talk about Midas?
Yeah, basically you buy it whenever your game would look the same.
Yep.
Not buying it.
Exactly. Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're doing all these things I'm telling you, and you're in these Ursa type heroes, Sven type heroes, where you're just kind of sitting in your lane anyway, and then you buy this Vlads and you end up running at towers and feeding, you'd be like, maybe I wasn't strong enough to pressure yet. Maybe I should have just static the wave. And in that case, I could just, like, I bought the Vlads to pressure. I tried to pressure, wasn't strong enough. Maybe next time I should just wait, you know? That kind of stuff. But what was I saying? Okay, so when we envision this mid-game portion, when you're talking about these Sven-type heroes, in general, when it comes to objectives, what hero on any team will dictate what objective they're threatening?
The strongest one.
When I just talked about map distribution of who's doing what between your 5 heroes, which one of those heroes, in terms of the role, will fit who's dictating which objective your team is playing around?
I guess Ursa right now. Because
Okay, so you have one hero, you have 2 heroes playing off map, 2 heroes potentially nuking waves, and 1 hero walking down lanes. What hero of those 5 dictates objectives?
The one pushing out lanes?
The one walking down lanes. Down lanes. Okay, so, like, in that case, if you're playing off map and you're farming jungle, what hero should you be playing around?
The Bristleback?
The one walking down lanes.
Yeah.
The Bristleback. Because guess what happens if they contest him while he walks down that lane?
He just quills them in the face.
And you fucking kill them because you're right there, right? And what happens if they don't contest him when he's walking down the lane?
Then you take the objective.
Right? Like, see, you see how that's, like, creating this, like... So when you're playing these off-map heroes, this applies a lot to offlaning. Literally, like, offlaning, a lot about being in the right place on your team is understanding who on your team is the one threatening objectives. 80% or more of the time, it's just the guy walking down lanes. It's just whoever on your team's job it is to walk down a lane is usually that guy who's threatening objectives. Like, you may say, BSJ, but Pugna and Jakiro are the tower takers. Yeah, but if Pugna is showing in lane by himself, even if you're behind him, he might just die instantly. Like, he's not the one showing on the lane. He's going to be the one showing up to the lane. So, like, that's just a perspective thing. So, like, the whole reason I'm bringing this up to you is because at the end of the day, at this point in the game, where you're this, like, off-map hero kind of farming items, at the end of the day, if you don't go Basher, so be it. I think Basher's way better because of all the things I've talked to you about. But if you go BKB, that's not nearly as important as understanding that while you're farming items, you're the one that's not threatening objectives, okay? Anytime you're in a I need to farm mode, you ask yourself how strong you are while you're doing that, what you're avoiding while you're doing that, and how to make it so you're not a useless piece of shit if possible. Sometimes, if you're like this Terrorblade with a terrible start, and your Bristleback showing in lane, it's actually your job to stay as far away from him as possible, because you know you're a useless piece of shit, and he dictates the objectives, and if you go to him, suddenly your entire team's around an objective. Because if you're a Terrorblade with a terrible start, and your Bristleback's trying to force an objective, what do you think he's actually trying to do for you?
He's trying to create space.
Yeah, so the last thing he needs to do is have you show up. On the other hand, in this case, what's the Bristleback actually doing for your hero by showing on map?
He's enabling me.
He's enabling you to be aggressive because you don't have to show, right? So, like,
Yeah.
That's the other perspective, is when you have this hero walking down lanes for you, how does that impact the hero you're specifically playing, right? As Axe and Ursa, it's setting up for you. As Pug Ninja Kuro, it's potentially setting up to help them push the tower, or it's helping them more safely take farm on the other parts of the map, right? So the one problem I have in this game right here is that you're on the opposite side of the map from Bristleback. So there's two options that come in these games. One, you're the guy dictating objectives, okay? In the Sven game, as well as at portions of this game with Roche. In which case, you decide what those objectives are, you play around them, and if possible, you ask your team to help you, okay? Sometimes it just doesn't work, though. But the other option is that you're not forcing objectives. There's literally, your hero itself is not forcing objectives, in which case either one of your teammates is, or the enemy team is. And then we have to talk about, or we have to think about all the things we just talked about. If it's one of your teammates, how do you relate to that? If it's the opponent forcing objectives, what do you think it is? And if they do that objective, what's your response? So say, I'm going to give you a quiz question. I know I've rattled so much into your face. I understand that it's a lot to take in. If the enemy team is forcing tier 2 top, like when I say forcing, you see two heroes walking down the lane right here. So you've got like 20 seconds before they push tier 2 top, okay? And you don't want to fight them. What should you immediately do no matter where you are on the map?
I should walk to where I want to be.
Which is bottom, because they're top,
Yeah.
okay? It could be mid, I guess, technically. But somewhere else that isn't there, and you walk there, exactly. Like, sense of urgency, immediately walk there. If you want to fight them there, what should you do?
I guess since I have 20 seconds, I can still walk there.
Yeah, you can either walk somewhere else, take, like, say you want to fight them top, but you think it'd be better if you pushed bottom real quick and then go. Or you could TP top immediately and set up on them. What if you're the disruptor, right? If you're like a disruptor support, just or like the equivalent in an offlane scenario. If you're the Bat Rider and you want to fight them, you should be there before they get there, right? Like, the point is, when you see people walking down lanes, and if you think about the impact of your Bristle walking down lanes, you can look at the other team doing the same thing. Who on their team's going to walk down lanes?
The Juggernaut.
Against Ursa? Axe?
I was thinking he would just spin TP, but the Axe calls him, and then Ursa just...
Okay, so who on their team's going to walk down lanes?
Razor?
Yeah. Right? So, like, wherever he is where the team's going to play. Is that... Have you watched this game back? Is that, like, not 90% accurate?
Yeah, it is.
Where he is, the enemy team is? Like, that's just where it is. That's just how the game works, right? And anytime that, guess what? The guy's walking down lanes and the team's not there, guess what happens?
I guess if the team's not there, then we can kill him.
Then the guy fucking dies.
Yeah.
And look what happened. The guys that are supposed to walk down lanes are dead because nobody's playing with them. So guess what? If you have a teammate in your bracket who's supposed to walk down lanes and the enemy team, and you're camping behind him like you should be, the enemy team's going to do the exact same shit they do, because that's what they do, and then they're going to die. And if they don't do it, you win. Or, you know, like, you take an objective. So, like, it seems so... What's amazing about Dota, okay, is how much can be going on right in front of your face, and you just don't realize it. Like,
yeah,
like all this stuff, like, clearly you've never thought about it before. There's so many times that a player's talked to me about something, and I've been like, wow, now that you tell me about it, it is so obvious that that has applied to like every game I've ever played. And you're like,
Yeah, it is.
isn't it like that? So
Because like I've thought about this stuff, but only like half of it.
yeah, and it's important to get the whole picture, man. Like it really is. So I know this is a lot to take in. So I'm pretty much done with the session now. It's been about an hour and a half.
Okay.
What I'm gonna say now is what I think you need to do to work on this stuff. Okay, so long story short, every hero plays this kind of stuff differently. Okay, so the first and foremost thing that needs to be understood is it's the same thought process on every hero. It's the same questions, different answers on every hero in every situation. Meaning, like if you're behind on Ursa, if you're ahead on Ursa, it's different. If you're playing Ursa as opposed to Sven, it's different. You know, if you're the guy forcing objectives, it's different than if you're the guy that's playing off map. Okay, you get what I'm saying? So it's same questions, different answers. So the important way to approach this is to first like maybe go and review this session, or like make sure you have a good idea of what I told you needs to be the things on your mind. So, you know, we talked about items and stuff, make sure you take care of that. But when we talk about this like mid game or like early game objective taking, start to think about who you are in this equation, okay? And by the easiest way to do that is by playing the same hero 5 to 10 games in a row and then moving on to another hero once you feel like you can correctly identify that hero. If you feel like you can't after like 10 games and you feel like it's just going to take more time, that's fine. If you feel like you're just missing something, go watch a professional replay of somebody play that hero and guess what they're doing in that circumstance. Like, oh, I see this Ursa with free farm. I think they're going to go this item and go take this objective. And if they don't do it, be like, you know, like, why? You know, like what? Why are they not doing what I would think they would do? And maybe you don't exactly understand everything they're doing, but you don't have to operate at a 7K level to beat 2K players. You just have to operate at a 3 or 4K level, and you'll easily beat them, right? Like, that's just how it works. So, playing the same hero 5 to 10 times in a row to learn these concepts is pretty important. Maybe even more. I don't even want to give you a number because I don't want you to feel bad if you've played 10 games of Ursa and you feel like this is still confusing. Like, it may take longer. Like, certain heroes are more complicated than others. Like, depending on like the experience you're actually getting in the game, maybe you just played 10 stomps in a row, whatever. But the point is, putting yourself, you want to isolate these variables. And these variables, since they're different from every hero, you need to like make it so you're playing the same hero and learning these things. So kind of get in this rhythm. And what happens is you'll notice that it's very rhythmic when you're playing these heroes, meaning like there's only so many options that can happen in each game when you're playing a hero. And the thing is, it gets the creativity and like the in-depth understanding of Dota isn't from being able to correctly identify your objective. It's being able to figure out how to get it when you know your objective, they know your objective, and now suddenly you're at a standstill of how the fuck do I force this objective? Like, because I know they know. The thing in your bracket is you need to know what that objective is, because guess what? Most of them won't. Because if you just know it, you're going to be doing that objective more effectively than them. And once you're doing that objective and like playing the map like this, like sitting behind the bristle in this example, playing around Roche at like 10 to 12 minutes instead of like being bottom, what's going to happen is eventually you'll climb MMR enough such that the other players also do this stuff correctly. And then you'll have to learn how to fight them and smoke and, you know, set up the proper way to get this objective. And your bracket, the first step is to just know that objective and at a basic level and just fundamentally rinse and repeat, because on every hero it's just a bit different. Like, you know, whether or not you're a tower pusher, whether or not you're an off lane or off map type of hero, whether or not you're an on map type of hero, like ask yourself, at what point is my hero supposed to farm a little bit? What point is my hero supposed to be the one fighting? Like, how long can I fight for? And this isn't going to be perfect, but generally speaking, like, I just want to remind you, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, if you just think about this stuff, you will apply it at a good enough level to feel like you're just... What ends up happening is when I'm a 7K player playing against 5Ks, I just feel like I'm 3 steps ahead of them the entire game. And that's what feeling you should eventually start getting in these 2 games, where you just feel like you're doing nothing fancy. You're just thinking, this is my next objective. How do I get it? And suddenly the enemy team's movements are going to seem really obvious and really slow. And eventually, that's not going to be enough. Meaning, like, you'll get to, like, 2.5 or 3K, and it's not going to be enough anymore. So, like, at that point, you'll have to start going into the more of the stuff I'm talking about here. But at a very basic level, play the same hero, and think about the objectives and what you need in order to take them. And that comes into items, that comes into skill build. Say, like, you want to take Roche, and you're really scared of the enemy team because of the first 10 minutes, their lineup's really scary. And you're like, I guess I'll go Midas first, and then I'll plan for Roche around 15. That's like an example of a further in-depth application of this same concept. So what you'll learn is once you start trying to take the correct objective, you'll fail taking that objective. So you'll learn whether or not you had to smoke for it, whether or not you had to wait for more items, whether or not you should have taken another objective first. Example, like the mid-tier 2, you should have taken Roche first. I gave you some, like, fundamental rules that are correct most of the time, okay? Mm-hmm. If you just follow those rules, slowly but surely, you'll run into enough scenarios that you'll learn, they don't always apply. But if I do this rule, it'll work most of the time. And I'll figure out why it didn't work in specific scenarios. It's much easier to know what you're supposed to be doing and then understand why it didn't work once it's failed, rather than just failing and not knowing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, big difference in terms of learning curve. Like, it's going to take you way longer to learn if the game's chaos to you. But if you have a centered focus on what you're doing next, like, and I'm telling you, in the laning stage, what I'm doing next is as simple as getting some phase boots, okay? What I'm doing next is getting my Quelling Blade. What I'm doing next is waiting till level 3, because at level 3, I'm really strong on Timbersaw. I'm giving you examples of, like, if I'm Ursa and I'm level 1 in this patch, I'm kind of weak. Like, I'm not terribly weak, but I'm kind of just chilling, right? So I'll buy a Quelling Blade. And then once I hit level 2, I'm still kind of weak because Overpower is only as strong as my Fury Swipes. But once I get level 3, suddenly my Fury Swipes do twice as much damage. Maybe I'll want to have boots by the time I'm level 3, right? Like, because I'm scary with level 3. So this is an example of what I'm saying here is, that isn't that not just a basic application of the same concept as what we're talking about here? Right? Like, You're thinking about your objective, you're thinking about what you want to do next. Don't overcomplicate things, like, meaning don't worry what's happening 10 minutes from now. Don't think about anything else. Like, I don't care if you potato die 3 times in a game because you're so busy thinking about these things. I just need you to think what you're currently doing and what's next. So if you're thinking about what you're currently doing and that's not an objective, guess what you're currently doing? You're farming something, either a level or an item. And then guess what? All you need to know is why you're farming that level or item. Like, I'm farming phase boots because those phase boots allow me to be aggressive. Okay, so until I get those phase boots, I'll probably tone down the aggression a little bit. But then when I get them, I'll do that. So it's like, on Ursa, I want to be aggressive, so I'm going to buy these phase boots. On Ursa, I want to Roche, so what do I need in order to Roche? Like, what's my next thing? And go ahead.
Lifesteal.
Yeah, exactly, right? I just need lifesteal if I want to Roche. But what if I have an offlane Sven who gets a Vlads? Maybe I can just go Midas and go Roche with them, right? Like, sometimes, like, in a more complicated sense, it'll be based on your teammates. But in your bracket, I'd rather just say, if you need lifesteal to Roche on Ursa, probably just buy Morbid. Like, don't worry about teammates. But, so, I know I talk a lot. I know I, rattled your ear off. Are there any, like, final questions you have or things I didn't explain clearly or didn't talk at all about?
I think that helped a lot, actually, because I would say last patch I understood the heroes that I was playing more, and so now I guess I just have to figure it out with these heroes and then start applying that.
I think that's important, and what you'll realize is if you get the general concepts down, because I'm someone who's in the past really struggled with hero pool, is once you get the general concepts down, it's much easier to learn these other heroes. Sometimes it's mechanical limitations, like literally for me on Clinks. I never really realized why I was bad at Clinks. And then I realized how to play off map properly. Like, talking general concepts, I learned how to apply pressure off map, the way I'm teaching you with Ursa and Bristle here. And then I also learned on Huskar, I used orb toggling, and I learned how to CS on ranged heroes. My CSing on ranged heroes, my mechanics were really bad. Suddenly I went back to Clinks, and after like 15 games, I felt like I knew exactly what I was doing on Clinks. Because what you'll learn is every hero in the game has like a requirement of some general mechanical requirements, and general conceptual understandings, right? Like they do overlap, like they do. Not all, obviously every hero is unique combination of all these things. But if you think, I'm just telling you, when you're learning these new heroes, if you think about the general concepts, it will become much easier to learn more new heroes in the future patches. But the best time to learn a hero is when they're completely broken, because you have a lot of replays to study, and you also have, because there's a lot of people playing it, and you also have more room for error because the hero's good. On top of that, your teammates knowing what your hero does is pretty important a lot of the time. If your teammates have literally no clue what your hero is supposed to do, then they'll have a tougher time playing with you. And if your hero's in 70% of their games, they'll probably have a good idea of what that hero's supposed to do. So makes it easier that way. So yeah, man, thanks for signing up. You know, always rattle off crazy. Glad we were able to figure out those technical difficulties. Best of luck with improving, and I hope it works out for you, dude.
All right, thank you very much.
Problem, dude. Have a good one.
You too.
Offlane / Safelane, or Offlane Sven, Safelane Ursa, item shop fundamentals, knowing